All right, it looks like everyone is here and it's 7 o'clock, so let's get started. We'll do a quick round of introductions and then jump right into the agenda. We have 3 items tonight. My name is Lee Dixon. I'm Commissioner for 1CO2, which is the wedge between Columbia and Connecticut Ave Northwest. Anyone else want to go?
Hello, I'm Commissioner Margaret Stevens, representing 1C05, bordered by Rock Creek Park and Walter Pierce Park, and home to Fire Station 21, the famous kiosk, and the large Ontario apartment building.
Hi, I'm Daniel Michelson Horowitz. I'm in 1C01, which is the southern tip of the spear, bordered by Florida Avenue and California, just by the CVS Mint Gym, up to Wyoming and across to Columbia, and then past the Hilton to Florida again, including the and a bunch of other amazing businesses, and one of which we'll hear from.
Hey, Daniel, you're breaking up. I'm not sure if that was my computer.
I apologize. I did see that I froze for a second. I don't know where you heard me, but glad to be here.
All
right. Commissioner Jake Valaschini, 1C07, 18th to 17th, roughly from Florida to Columbia.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, everyone else, for joining us for this meeting. To start, Commissioner Stevens, I'm going to let you take the lead on this. We're going to be discussing ANC 1A's resolution on blighted properties in the neighborhood. So we're welcoming Jeremy Sherman to join us as a panelist today.
Yeah, so basically, Jeremy is here to discuss his resolution concerning blighted properties and then answer any questions we might have, and then discuss the possibility of us submitting a letter in support of that resolution or writing one very similar to his with possibly a few other nuances to that. So with that, I think I'll give the floor to Jeremy so he can just give us an overview of the resolution, and also, may I say, also other initiatives that they are enacting, because they sound very interesting, and I'm hoping that we can get involved and possibly our constituents could get involved as well. So take it away, Jeremy. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Commissioner. I appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeremy Sherman. I'm a commissioner in another part of Ward 1. Great to be with other Ward 1 folks here in Columbia Heights for 1A. I have, 1A sort of started this resolution back in June, and I've been speaking with commissioners around the city about it. So I'm really grateful to take some time today and speak with you all about it as you're considering a similar resolution. Let me start at the beginning here about where this all actually came from. I was not an expert myself on vacant and blighted properties. I'm the chair of ANC 1A's Small Business and Economic Development Committee. And this just came up as a concern from neighbors and business owners about a lot of vacant properties in commercial corridors in Columbia Heights. And as I started to kind of dig into it, in specific situations, I ended up hitting a roadblock where there was no further to go with Department of Buildings, with DPW, with Department of Health. Every agency would sort of say, that's the limit, that's the end of what we can do as it relates to this vacant and blighted property. And potentially there are other commissioners on this call or neighbors who've experienced that exact same thing, where all the sort of agencies say, like, that's the end of what we can do, and still the property remains vacant and blighted and a nuisance to the community and to the neighborhood. So I went on sort of a listening tour, talking with folks at Department of Buildings, talking with neighbors, talking to the Office of Tax and Revenue, and it became very clear to me that legislation is needed from the council to change and reform the laws and regulations of vacant and blighted properties in Washington, D.C. Based on my research and understanding, it's been over 10 or 15 years since these laws have changed. I believe it was 2011, the last time that anything was enacted as it relates to class 3 and class 4 vacant and blighted tax regulations, but there really hasn't been a lot. This was a priority area of the chairman many years ago, and the result of his focus was to split DCRA into Department of Buildings and Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection. And the thought was that that would help us address vacant and blighted properties more effectively. Unfortunately, that hasn't been the case, and further reform is needed. And so we drafted this resolution outlining the various issues that are faced with how a neighborhood and a city addresses vacant and blighted properties, and then going a step further to propose some ideas and put some innovative thoughts out there about what might help, both from an incentive perspective, but also from a penalty perspective. You need both the carrot and the stick to make this a better situation. Last thing I'll say before I talk about what's happened since we took this issue on is there's also a piece of the Office in Tax and Revenue. Everyone might be familiar with tax sales and the tax sale process in Washington, D.C. That's sort of the end of vacant and blighted property life cycle. That is a major issue that needs reform. It's very predatory. There are many properties that go to tax sale to a tax sale buyer that has no intention whatsoever of bringing that property back into productive use. And when a property does go to tax sale, the city loses any power that it would have otherwise to do something productive for this property. So there's a lot of areas in the investigation and research that I've done to make this a better system. And it seems like something every ANC and every commissioner and every neighbor, wants to do something about. So we passed this resolution in June. Commission 1E has since passed a resolution on their side. 1D has also passed this resolution. Other commissions, I think 4B further north is taking up a similar resolution. Everyone's sort of tweaking it slightly to speak to the specific issues that your commission and your neighborhood is facing. Last thing I'll say before I stop and open it up for questions is that not only as a result of this resolution, but I think this resolution, and hopefully if you pass it as well, have pushed the chairman to refocus on this issue. And Chairman Mendelson has now stood up a vacant and blighted property working group that involves lots of different agencies and stakeholders. And I have I want commissioners and neighbors to know about this working group and keep their eyes on it, because there's momentum, and passing this resolution keeps our foot on the pedal, keeps the momentum going to ensure that this some legislation does come from this working group and that it can pass the council. So that's sort of the grand overview about it. I think Margaret had mentioned, Commissioner Stevens had mentioned a question around why there's a focus on commercial properties specifically. So I'll address that and then stop for other questions you might have. But we're coming at this mainly from an economic development perspective, but not only, right? There's a residential and a commercial lens for vacant and blighted properties. But from our commission's perspective, the economic opportunity of a commercial property is greater than that of a residential property. There's a higher opportunity cost because it's next to a business, because it's in a commercial corridor that contributes to the neighborhood's economic potential and output. And right now, the laws don't view a property in a commercial area versus residential area any differently. They're not even categorized by the Department of Building as such. There's no data to segment and slice up properties by where they're located. And so I have a data set that I think I've shared that overlays all of the zones on top of the vacant property data from DOB to see where a lot of the properties actually fall in terms of mixed use zones, residential zones, et cetera. So there's filtering and all of that, so you can look at what's specific for your commission area. I'll stop there. I could talk about vacant and blighted properties all day. There's a lot more to say, but again, thank you for having me here tonight. I'm it's great that you're considering a similar resolution, and I encourage you to shape it and mold it for what's the specific issues of you and your neighbors.
All right, well, thank you very much, Commissioner Sherman. We really appreciate the time you're taking to be here and explain this to us. I read through it and I'm very impressed, especially by the amount of research you did regarding this resolution. But the question that I had was about why it was more commercially focused than residential. I haven't looked at the data set yet, but I'm curious to look at that. I think for us, and I'll let Commissioner Stevens speak about this, there is one like major property in our ANC, a big one that's I think zoned residential that is blighted. So I think we might want to tailor some more things in our version of this towards residential, but I'll let Commissioner Stevens speak to that.
Yeah, so I think it makes sense that possibly the residential and commercial would be viewed differently and have different policy features or whatever, nuances surrounding that. But I guess I would want the penalties to be just as strict for residential as they are for commercial, if that makes sense. With possibly, I was thinking maybe for residential there would be more caveats, so that more exceptions, I should say. So for instance, if it's and this happens, I think probably a lot, maybe a relative dies and a person inherits that property, and maybe that property hasn't been kept up very well. So then this person has this property, they want to keep it in the family, so maybe there's an exception for them, to be able to get assistance, have some time to get on their feet and get the whole renovation going, this kind of thing. Or maybe if someone truly has a health or financial difficulties, maybe that person gets a break in terms of how long their property can stay blighted, and again, maybe getting some assistance. It's just that there are properties so that are definitely not in those categories, and Commissioner Dixon was referring to one is right down the hill from me, that has been horribly neglected and blighted for years and years and years. And finally, we did get a blighted classified class 4 with the proper tax penalties and so forth. And it actually recently sold at tax sale. But here's, what you were talking about. Now, though, apparently the owner somehow has a whole year to get the property back. And so I'm not really sure that this tax sale is going to be the answer, to our problem. So, now, yeah, it remains to be seen. So anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting in all the conversations I've had across the city about vacant and blighted properties. It seems that every commission can think of like one or two of the biggest, most challenging properties that they've been dealing with, whether it's something relatively new or it's been standing for a long time. And there's always a backstory to all of these properties. I think in regard to your question around residential and commercial, my approach when writing this resolution was not to be overly prescriptive with how to solve the problems, right? I was more calling for, hey, we need reform and we need change. And here are a few ideas that are not super specific, but they're thought starters. And so I would encourage you to include, more mentions of their commercial and residential properties should be treated differently, but that doesn't mean that one should be more important than the other. And certain incentives and penalties should be designed specifically for, what makes those properties unique, commercial or residential. And I think to your point, Commissioner Stevens, around other exemptions that might have, there might be more exemptions relevant to residential property. So to the extent that you want to include that language, I would absolutely encourage it, but maybe not being overly prescriptive in terms of just calling for the fact that change and reform and new regulations are needed around it.
Right. I tend to get in the weeds and overthink. So we'll have to get together and discuss, and maybe, like you say, just be, not too specific, with things. So.
Are there any other questions from commissioners? right, if not, I'm going to open it up to everyone. Kristen Barden.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Kristen.
Okay, all right, great. Sometimes this format's difficult to know if I'm on or not. Yeah, I don't think can you see me? No,
No.
okay, all right. So the vacant property issue is something that we have a lot of experience with. So, Jeremy, I'm Kristen Barden with the Adams Morgan Partnership. We're the business improvement district in Adams Morgan. And you're absolutely right. The whole process is broken and needs to be reformed. I'm really pleased to hear that the chairman Chairman Mendelson has started this working group. I was not aware of that, so that's really good to know about, and I'm going to try to get some more information on that, because we see it all the time in Adams Morgan, where commercial property owners have leased their space to a new tenant, and they've started the work, and they've got posted building permits, and there's active construction going on, and they will get a vacant property sticker plastered on the front of their building. And it's like what? They've got building permits, there's active, work going on. Like, yes, there's not currently, a business operating there, but there is something happening, and something happening soon. So, for them to get penalized that way, and then to have to go and fight it with OTR, it's really a hassle. And then there was a case just a couple of weeks ago where Wendy Hounstein and her husband Greg, they owned the vintage furniture store 1830 that was at 1830 Columbia Road. They live upstairs above it. They closed the store, but their offices are still there in that store space. They got a vacant property sticker on their building, and they live there. And so they actually posted another sign next to it saying, thanks DC, but we live here. It's like they don't, like, the left hand isn't talking to the right hand, and if they had just checked some other records, they would see that no, there is indeed, a whole family of 4 people living in that building, and it is indeed not vacant. So, there absolutely needs to be some changes, because it's so broken. It just does not work the way it's currently being done. So, anyhow, I'd love to see our ANC's resolution, and I'd be happy to work on this with you all as well.
Yeah, Kristen, I definitely think you would be a good resource to help us iron this out. Are you aware of, do you know how many vacant properties we have in Adams Morgan right now? Like chronically vacant?
Chronically
Kristen,
vacant commercial properties?
Yeah.
Commercial, yeah, but not residential. I don't track residential.
If I can quickly just respond to a little bit of what you said, Kristen. So you bring up a great point, and I've heard multiple stories across the city of instances where a business is about to open and they have permits in the window, and DOB still comes by and puts up a vacant sticker. And so the opposite side of this is also true, right? Like, we need to be better about the long-standing properties, but also need to not be distracted by the properties that shouldn't be deemed vacant. One of the reasons for this that I've uncovered is, number one, in the 311 app and platform, anyone can submit a request for a vacant building inspection. DOB has also staffed up their inspector team, which was very understaffed before COVID, when it was DCRA, and during COVID. And so now they've made a conscious effort to staff up and try to get a better count of how many vacant and blighted properties actually exist in Washington, DC. There's some things that indicate we might be undercounting right now. But because of that, there's been a little bit of an overcount, I would argue. So that's a little bit where it's coming. And I think as part of the resolution, you may want to consider, what are some of the criteria that would mean that the property is not vacant, right? If a lease has been signed in the last year, if there's active live permits in the window, some obvious things like that. It should also be part of the reforms we hopefully pass.
Right, exactly. Or if there's a family, living upstairs, and they're using the first floor as office space, like in the case of Wendy and Greg, and yes, they closed the 1830 vintage furniture store, but they're still using it as active office space. So, that building is not vacant. Even though, like, if you're just looking in the front window, you might not see, it being actively used, but there are other tools that they can use to determine whether or not that building is occupied. So in that case, it was just simply lazy work, and they are not work at all. And now Wendy and Greg had to stop everything else they were doing and resolve this. And it's sometimes really tricky to resolve. It's not just sending them, a simple document. It can be quite complicated. And I also know of other examples. Bill Thomas, when he was doing the Imperial building in 18th and Florida, he was in the process of getting building permits, and he got slapped with a vacant property sticker. And so he couldn't get his building permits until he resolved the vacant property issue, and he couldn't resolve the vacant property issue until he got his building permits. So he was caught in this catch-22, and there was no winning, and it was only until when the council member got involved that he was able to get it resolved. So, it's so anyhow, I'm happy to, to get more involved in this because I feel really strongly about it. And I can give you even more examples, but I won't waste everybody's time.
No, it's just that's maddening because, they're penalizing people who shouldn't be, who it sounds like are actually moving forward. It's either getting just caught in the whole mess or moving forward to actually improve the property versus ones, like I say, that are just perpetually neglected and blighted, almost to the point of demolition by neglect, and
right,
so
right.
like
And those,
Commissioner Sherman was saying, we gotta get it right, where DOB and OTR and all are using all of their energy to focus on the ones that are the real issue and the real problem, versus just kind of randomly slapping stickers on everything, because that's a waste of, time and money and effort and energy, because and I mean, so I mean, and the reason that, I'm concerned about it, for one reason, I expressed this to Commissioner Sherman, is just the length of time that these buildings are allowed to go on like that. And then, in my opinion, that encourages other developers or building owners here in my SMT to do the same thing. Oh, so-and-so is just leaving it like that. For whatever reason, I'm going to do the same. And so it's sort of like it's, just a blight in general that's going from one building to next. So in the 1A resolution, what I like is that the penalties increase as the years increase. So I do like that very much. And so I think for myself, and I'll just put this out there. If other people have questions, you can answer those first. But I definitely want to know about this working group. Is that the task force that's mentioned in your resolution, or is that like a separate thing? Because I saw something about a task force.
Yeah, no, that was just an idea. The task force was something I was, sort of calling for to be put together, made up of ANCs to strategize and advise on this. And I don't know if the thought of a working group from the chairman's office was already underway or this inspired that. I don't know the details, but no, it's not the same thing. This working group is made up of lots of stakeholders, some government agencies, some nonprofits. I think there's some bids involved in Main Street. It's kind of like a smattering of different stakeholders across the city to try to be as representative as possible. And it's just getting underway, I believe. And so I think the goal is by the end of the calendar year to have put forward some recommendations. We're really trying to study the root cause of why properties become vacant and blighted in the first place. Eventually we'll get to the tax sale process, right? We're sort of making our way through the life cycle of a vacant and blighted building to understand where the right interventions, incentives and penalties might be, to then put forward recommendations that can turn into legislation.
Yeah. Do you, Jeremy, do you have any links or any information to to the chairman's working group. I'm just curious, like, who all is on it, and you know, if their meetings are open to the public or any of that.
I'm not the one leading it. I would recommend reaching out to anyone on his staff. And even though this working group is underway, I'll highlight that this resolution is still really important, right? Like, any working group and any piece of legislation can lose momentum at any moment. And so keeping you know, the pressure on, and as this is an important issue and we want to see reform, is important to hear from ANC. So you know, if you want to make reference to the working group in your resolution, I think that could be great. That's sort of a development since we passed it several months ago. But no, I would encourage you to reach out to the chairman or anyone on their staff. I believe it's Blaine, who is the lead of the working group.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sending ANC 1A's resolution. Does ANC 1C, do you have a draft resolution yet?
No, we do not.
No, we actually did pass one around a year ago, but it was definitely very general, very bare bones. And I like the fact that 1A is getting, and while not too rigid, you know, getting a little more into the policy, actual recommendations and policy changes, a little more specific than, definitely more specific than what we had. So I like that aspect too. So I think I'll leave it to Commissioner Dixon as to the next steps, but I think, yeah, we just need to discuss whether we do want to just write a letter in support or if we want our own resolution. It sounds like we may want a few tweaks, so maybe we do write our own resolution. So, and I would definitely want to maybe attend some of these meetings with the working group too before we finalize, I think, the resolution, just to bounce ideas off people and hear things, you know, so kind of collaborate.
I don't know for certain if they're like open to everybody. I know that there's a concern about too many cooks in the kitchen kind of thing, but this is an important issue for so many different stakeholders. So it might, you know, I think the lens I'm coming from is that ANCs just generally should be more involved in the identification, prioritization of vacant and blighted properties. You know, there's what, 4,500 properties across the entire city. It doesn't feel like right now DOB has a specific prioritization method or mechanism for understanding the ones that are most important to address first. And ANCs are the perfect body to be that advisory partner and help them prioritize with collecting more on the ground qualitative and quantitative data about those properties. So I can't speak for certain about involvement in the working group, but I definitely think from your perspective, calling out in the resolution or in a letter, the importance of ANC's involvement moving forward with DOB is would be a great thing to include.
Horowitz?
Yeah, Commissioner Sherman, is there a time sensitivity here? Is there legislation that is being considered or introduced? I know the council just returned, but you know, is there a reason, you know, for example, if we wanted to bring up a resolution in this committee next month, and then it would go to our full commission at the meeting in early November, is that going to, you know, miss the boat?
I don't think so. I don't know the timeline of this working group and of legislation, but my hunch is that that timing is fine. If anything, it like kind of gives a little bit of room and then it re-ups the importance of it, you know, in a few months' time. My sense is that this working group's trying to put forward some recommendations by the end of the calendar year, which might turn into legislation next year. But there does seem to be energy across the entire council on this. Like, I don't think there's a single council member that doesn't want to do something on this topic. So sort of a non-answer to your question, but I think that timing is fine. There's not a huge sense of urgency.
Okay. Why don't we do this? Commissioner Stevens, could you possibly put this into a Google Doc for us and share it with the rest of the PZT peeps? That way we can edit it and we can include, you know, mention of the working group and any other changes or additions we want to make to it.
I
And
can
then
definitely
we
do-
can, put it on the agenda for next month. Does that work for everyone? Okay, great. Are there any other questions for Commissioner Sherman? Nope. All right. Well, thank you so much, Commissioner Sherman, for being here. We really appreciate it and, getting the ball rolling.
Yeah, of course. Thank you all. If you need any other help or questions, want to be a resource, I've become sort of a self-described expert on this topic. So I'm happy to continue the conversation. But thank you again and have a great evening.
Great. Thanks. You too.
Thank you.
All right. Great. Next up, we have a presentation regarding a patio permit submittal for Foxtrot located at 1827 Adams Mill Road. If you were here to present on that, please raise your hand. Deborah Moy, can we make her a panelist?
Hey, it's Deborah at Restaurant Consultants. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, Deborah. Yes, we can.
And I apologize. I'm going to stay off camera tonight. I had to just rush back from taking my dad to the hospital. Unfortunately, he has COVID.
Oh,
uh,
sorry to hear that.
He's not doing too bad, but he's on some medications that interacts with the COVID medication. So he had to get the right doctors together to figure out which ones takes priority and figure that out. So I've been rushing all evening. I'm a mess. So, and I think we also have Chris Trushke online with us from Foxtrot that will be joining the meeting as well. But I can share my screen with the drawing if you like.
Yes, that'd be great. And can we make Chris a panelist, please?
All right, can you see that all right?
Yes.
Okay, so this is, again, my name's Deborah Moy from Restaurant Consultants. We're handling the permitting for Foxtrot at this location. It's at 1827 Adams Mill Road. And it's on that corner there with Lanier Place. I'm sure you're familiar with it. And this is a unique situation because at this particular location, there is a building restriction line in place along the building. So technically, the only seats that are on public space are the 3 tables in the front. And the ones that they have at the other 2 locations are private property. But because of the building restriction line that's in place between the property owner and public space, they have to see everything that we're proposing outside that restriction line. So the drawings are showing everything that's on private as well as public that we submitted to DDOT for review. So it's a pretty basic layout. They're going to have seating, as you can see, in multiple areas. The way it's kind of an unusual shaped building, so there's a couple little different areas where they can have seats. But right now we've already been we're scheduled for the November hearing date. We've already been through the first round of reviews with everyone, and everyone's pretty in line with it. They just want a couple more dimensions on there for us to resubmit, but there haven't been any issues really with the layout to date. So.
Okay, great. And can you remind me what it is that you're seeking from us today specifically?
Just basically support letter, however y'all want to do it, just a support letter for the outdoor seating at this location for Foxtrot. Okay.
And it's specifically for those seats that are in the public space. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I don't know how with the, that's a good question because I don't know with the building restriction line, I don't know if you maybe need to word it for just, all the seating outside just to be safe.
Oh, okay.
Because since they do have some jurisdiction over the private property in this location, I would think that would probably be worthwhile to just show support for all the seating.
Okay. I remember when Pete's Cafe was there, they had outdoor seating in the same exact location and it wasn't a problem. I don't really have any questions. I'm happy that Foxtrot is coming to the neighborhood and that the space will be used. I will definitely be going there. So I'm going to open it up to the commission. Do you have any questions?
No, very excited for this. Thank you.
Great.
Great. Are there any questions from, someone's got a hand raised.
Jake.
Oh, Commissioner Felskini.
Thanks. I just need to dot I's and cross T's. I know that it is a part of the formal process as well, but I just want to confirm with you on this that it will meet all ADA compliance issues to make sure that anyone moving through the neighborhood that needs access to public space will be able to access that public space unimpeded.
Yes, definitely. Mhm. And you'll,
Thank
it's probably hard to see on the drawing, but they do have their ADA seating marked. And because of this unique location, you know, you've got extra pathways to go through, but they are maintaining it's a 9 foot 1.5 inch depth through this main part of the sidewalk here. Just where the tables are, you still have the 10 feet down here. But yes, it should be sufficient.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Falskini. Are there any other questions from attendees? No? Okay. I motion to move this to a full vote at the next full ANC meeting with a letter of support.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those against? Abstentions? All right, the motion passes 4-0. We will put that on the agenda for the full ANC. Chris,
All right.
excited for Foxtrot to open, so
Great.
more to come.
Thanks, Lee. We're under construction, so we'll be there before the end of the year.
All right, awesome. Happy to hear it.
Yep.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, have a good night.
Yep.
All right, and the last item on our agenda tonight is a presentation regarding a sidewalk cafe permit for Lucky Buns located at 2018th Street Northwest. If you were here to present for Lucky Buns, please raise your hand and we will make you a panelist. Shane Patterson. Hi, Shane. Welcome. Shane, you were muted.
Yes. Hello. Sorry for that. How are you?
That's okay. Good. How are you?
Joined. So I'm filling in for Alex McCoy. He had a family emergency. He had to get out of town for this meeting. He's down in Mississippi. But we're looking for support to take our unenclosed sidewalk permit to enclose our sidewalk permit from late October to early March at 2000 M Street for the Lucky Buns Cafe. So I do not have a presentation, but I would like to, get your support if we can enclose that patio to make sure we can stay open a little bit longer for our team and for the community.
Okay. So you've never enclosed it before?
No, it's not. It's been open. It's about 34 seats under the patio. So we're looking to do some. We have Carroll County awning getting some drawings together for us, and we're looking forward to getting moving so we can enclose that for the colder months.
Okay, and remind me, are you right on the corner there?
Yes, we are.
Okay, yeah, I can envision that. You always have the most beautiful plants out. I've always appreciated that about Lucky Buns.
Yes.
I swear I've actually seen that enclosed in the past, but I guess not.
I do not believe so. Not since I've been around, and I know that I do not think so in the last couple of years for sure.
Okay. I'm not sure I have any questions. Do any other commissioners have questions regarding this request? Commissioner Falaskini?
Thanks. And Shane, we love your business. I haven't actually ever gotten, I think, one of these requests for an enclosure. Would the enclosure move into public space, or would the enclosure all be on your private property?
It would be on our property. So it's just enclosing the side panels. It's a black awning with the clear windows on the side and then the front, so that door will walk through. So we do have heaters on the patio currently. So this will more than likely allow us to operate through the winter.
And then in the summer, would the idea be that those panels come off and it's open air again?
Exactly. So once the colder months are over, we would take them off, store them, then do it again the following year.
Got it. That makes sense. I don't. And do you have to go through? Are you a historic building? Do you have to go through any sort of historical review board review on this?
I do not believe so.
Cool. Cool. That's all I have.
Perfect.
Yeah, this is also my first time with a request for an enclosure. I mean, if you already have the layout there, it's just a matter of putting up the walls. I see no problems with it. Are there any other questions or
Support we need
concerns
is
from the community?
we'll apply for a new permit. We have to go from an unenclosed sidewalk to a enclosed. So that's why we need your support to go through that.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, are there any more comments, questions, or concerns from anyone on this call? Okay, I motion to bring this to the full ANC to offer a letter of support to enclose. Commissioner Valstini.
Real quick, this won't do away with those beautiful plants that are out there. Well, they'll still exist, right?
During the summer months, yes, sir. Winter, we'll probably do something for you just to keep everybody happy during the winter as well.
We love it.
Sorry to interrupt, Lee.
Are you planning to heat that enclosed space in the winter?
Yes, the heaters are already installed. So they've already been installed.
Great.
I'm sorry, I interrupted Commissioner Dixon.
That's okay. Are there any more questions or comments? All right, I motion to move this to the full ANC with offering a letter of support for the porch enclosure. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All right, the motion passes for nothing. Shane, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Yes, so we'll put this on the agenda for the full ANC in early October. Okay, well, that completes our agenda. Is there anything anyone else wants to talk about before we take off for the night?
Actually, I guess I have one question. So
Sure.
Commissioner Michelson Horowitz, did you add that blighted property resolution to the Google Drive for comment? Because I saw you sent a link, or do I need to do that?
No,
I can do it.
If you can do that, please. I
Okay, yep,
took
I
the
will.
document that I had in my email, just put it on my own personal
Got it.
Google Drive,
Okay.
just to share it for those on the
Yep.
meeting here.
Yeah, I will do that, and then I think I can invite you guys to make comments. So that I'll do that. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, well, thank you everyone for a great meeting and have a good night, and we will